Lines of code scrolled across my monitor in the dim light of my San Francisco apartment. It was 3 a.m., but I barely noticed. I was too focused on debugging the neural network that would either revolutionize artificial intelligence or prove my family right about girls in tech. Sarah, my roommate Rachel's voice broke through my concentration. You're still up? I nodded without looking away from the screen. Almost done with this learning algorithm. She sighed, the same way my family did when I switched from teaching to computer science 3 years ago. My firm is still hiring elementary teachers. I'm good here, I said, fingers flying across the keyboard. What Rachel didn't know, what nobody knew, was that my hobby coding had already attracted attention from major tech companies. The AI platform I'd built in secret was about to change everything. My phone buzzed, probably my father, wondering again when I'd come to my senses and return to teaching. Instead, it was an email from Andrea Martinez, the CEO of Vector Technologies. Final offer, $2.3 billion. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. I smiled, thinking of my father's words 3 years ago. Tech is for boys, Sarah. Stick to what you know. Tomorrow would show him exactly what I knew. The next morning, I stood in Vector's gleaming headquarters, 40 stories above Silicon Valley. My simple black blazer and jeans stood out among the suits, but I didn't care. I'd learned long ago that in tech, results mattered more than appearances. Sarah Chun. Andrea Martinez extended her hand, her smile genuine but calculating. Your AI platform is remarkable. Self-learning, adaptive, with applications across multiple industries. How long have you been developing it? 3 years, I replied. Since the day I quit teaching. She nodded, leading me to the conference room where lawyers and executives waited. And you did this alone? No team. Just me. Nights, weekends, any spare moment. Impressive. She gestured to a chair. Though I have to ask, why keep it secret? Most developers would have been shouting about this from the rooftops. I thought about my family's dismissal, my father's constant pressure to be realistic, my brother James's tech bros who'd never taken me seriously. I wanted the work to speak for itself, I said simply. Andrea smiled. Well, it's speaking volumes. $2.3 billion worth of volumes, to be exact. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Papers were signed, hands were shaken, and just like that, my hobby became one of the largest tech acquisitions of the year. As I left the building, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my father. Heard a rumor at the golf club, his text read. Something about you and Vector Technologies? What's going on? I didn't reply. Let him see it in tomorrow's headlines. That night, I sat in my apartment, watching the sunset paint Silicon Valley in shades of gold. Rachel burst in, waving her phone. Oh my God, Sarah. You're all over TechCrunch. Unknown developer sells revolutionary AI platform for $2.3 billion. Why didn't you tell me? I smiled, remembering all the times she'd gently suggested I was wasting my time with coding. Sometimes it's better to show than tell. My phone started buzzing nonstop. James, my brother, calling for the 3rd time. My mother's texts growing increasingly frantic. Former colleagues suddenly remembering my existence. Finally, I answered one call, my father. Sarah. His voice was different now, uncertain. This is incredible. But how? When did you? Remember when you said tech was for boys? I kept my voice calm. I decided to test that theory. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken regrets. I was wrong, he finally said. Yes, I agreed. You were. The next morning, I walked into my old classroom at Bay Area Elementary. Mrs. Rodriguez, my former principal, had invited me to speak to the girls' coding club, the one she'd reluctantly let me start before I left teaching. 20 young faces looked up at me, bright with curiosity and possibility. They said I couldn't code because I was a girl, I told them. So I coded something that changed the world. Who's ready to prove them wrong, too? Every hand shot up. That afternoon, I met James for coffee. My brother, the real tech expert with his computer science degree and startup dreams, couldn't quite meet my eyes. So that's what you were doing all those nights, he asked. When we thought you were just playing around? I stirred my latte. Did you ever actually ask what I was working on? He flinched. Sarah, about all those times I said. It's not about the words, I cut in. It's about the assumptions. Every time you and your tech friends dismissed me, every time you talked over me in meetings, every time you assumed I couldn't understand the complicated parts of coding, I took notes. Then I built something better. The neural network design, he said slowly. It's revolutionary. How did you even think of it? I smiled. Maybe because I didn't think like everyone else. Maybe because I had to find my own way. That evening, as headlines about the acquisition spread, I received an unexpected email from my old teaching mentor, Dr. Harris. I thought you were making a mistake leaving education, she wrote. But you were actually becoming the teacher we all needed. You've shown every girl in tech that their dreams are possible. That's the greatest lesson of all. A week later, I stood on stage at Vector's annual developer conference. Andrea had asked me to keynote, the first woman to do so in the company's history. They said tech was for boys. I began, looking out at the sea of faces. They said I should stick to teaching. But here's what they didn't understand. Sometimes the best innovations come from the people they tell to stay away. In the front row, I saw my father. He'd flown in specifically for this, arriving with an awkward hug and years of apologies. The future of technology, I continued, doesn't belong to any gender. It belongs to those who dare to think differently, to build differently, to dream differently. After the speech, Andrea pulled me aside. The integration team's ready to start implementing your AI platform. But I have a different proposal for you. She handed me a folder. Inside was an offer, not just for a position, but for a new division. I would lead Vector's AI Innovation Lab, with full autonomy and a blank check for research. Why me? I asked, though I already knew. She smiled. Because you didn't just build great tech. You built it despite every obstacle. That's the kind of leadership we need. That night, I returned to my apartment, though not for long. I'd already bought a house in the hills, with a home office overlooking the bay. Rachel was moving out, headed to a teaching position she loved. We were both exactly where we needed to be. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Sis, I was wrong. All of us were. But you've changed more than the industry. You've changed minds. I looked at my reflection in the window, remembering the scared ex-teacher who'd started coding in secret 3 years ago. She'd been right all along. The next morning, I walked into Vector's AI lab, my lab now. The team looked up expectantly, a mix of veterans and fresh faces. Some had probably been skeptical of their new leader, but the acquisition headlines had silenced most doubts. All right, I said, setting down my laptop. Let's change the world again. 6 months later, I stood in my parents' living room, watching my father struggle to understand the AI platform that had made his daughter a billionaire. But how does it think? He asked, peering at the interface. How does it learn? I sat beside him, the same way he used to sit beside me with math homework. Want me to teach you? He looked at me, then really looked at me, maybe for the first time. I do. I want to understand what you built. So I taught him. Not just the basics, but the real architecture of the system. He asked questions, good ones, his engineer's mind engaging with concepts he'd never thought his little girl could grasp. This is brilliant, he said finally. And we almost stopped you from building it. Almost, I agreed. But that's the thing about barriers. They only work if you accept them. Later that week, I launched a foundation focusing on girls in STEM. The first initiative? Converting my old elementary school classroom into a state-of-the-art coding lab. Mrs. Rodriguez cried when I presented the plans. We should have supported you more, she said. Then let's support them, I replied, watching young girls file into the room, eyes wide at the new computers. Let's give them what I had to fight for. The tech world was changing slowly but surely. More women in leadership, more diverse perspectives in development. My story had become a symbol, though that was never my goal. I just wanted to code, to build, to create. The revolution was just a side effect. Andrea called one evening as I was reviewing new AI implementations. The board wants to make you CTO, she said without preamble. First woman in the company's history. I thought about it, about all the changes I could make from that position. On one condition, I said. I want to rebuild our hiring practices. No more assumptions about who belongs in tech. Done, she replied. When can you start? I looked at my screen, where another neural network was taking shape. I already have. A year after the acquisition, I returned to my old apartment building. The coding club I'd started in the community center downstairs had grown into a full scholarship program for underrepresented developers. A young girl approached me after the session, clutching a laptop. My dad says girls can't be programmers, she said quietly. I knelt beside her. Want to know a secret? That's exactly what my dad said. Want to prove them both wrong. She grinned, opening her laptop to show me her first lines of code. The future was already different, already better. Not just because of the technology, but because of the barriers we were breaking, the assumptions we were challenging. My phone buzzed James again. Speaking at Stanford next week. Want to join? Show them what real innovation looks like. I smiled, thinking of all the times he'd talked over me at tech meetups. Only if I get to debug your demos. Deal, he replied. Though after that neural network, you're kind of scary. Good, I thought. Sometimes scary is exactly what progress needs to be. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere, if you've ever been dismissed because of who you are rather than what you can do, remember this. Barriers are often just other people's limitations projected onto your dreams. The key isn't to fight those limitations. It's to build something so extraordinary that they become irrelevant. Keep coding, keep creating, keep proving them wrong, not with words, but with excellence. Because sometimes the best response to "you can't" is simply to do it anyway, quietly and brilliantly, until success becomes too loud to ignore. Subscribe for more stories about breaking barriers, defying expectations, and building futures that nobody thought possible. Because every line of code, every innovation, every breakthrough starts with someone saying, "Why not me?" And sometimes, the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to accept the limitations others try to place on your dreams. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.